Jordan Poole has officially replaced JaVale McGee as the goofiest player in the NBA. He doesn't pay attention during timeouts, has atrocious shot selection, and really is just kind of doing his own thing out there all the time. But it didn't used to be like this. Jordan Poole used to be a guy that everyone loved in Golden State with a great work ethic and a bright future ahead of him. And just a few years ago, he was celebrating an NBA title and looked like the third Splash Brother. So how did we get here? How did Jordan Poole go from an exciting up-and-coming guard to the joke of the league? Poole began his path to the NBA as a top 100 player in the high school class of 2017, committing to Michigan. As a freshman, he had a solid season, but really separated himself in his second year with the program, playing a ton of minutes and averaging over 12 points per game, establishing himself as a somewhat intriguing NBA prospect. He was seen as a really good shooter, but certainly wasn't a true point guard and didn't have the size to play the two full-time either. Still, anybody that could shoot the ball the way that Poole could would have a chance to prove themselves in the NBA, and as he entered the draft in 2019, the league had never been a more friendly place for combo guards. At the time, Poole was projected to likely be a second-round pick and work his way into a shooting specialist kind of role, with maybe a little bit of on-ball creation mixed in, so going into draft night, there wasn't a ton of buzz around him. However, the Golden State Warriors saw something in Poole. They were intrigued by the shooting ability and his improvement from year 1 to year 2 in college, considering he wasn't a super highly ranked high school player. And they took him in the first round at 28th overall. And this was a selection that was met with a ton of criticism by draft experts. Poole didn't seem to have as much upside as other prospects still on the board due to his limited athleticism and not great physical profile, and there were doubts that he would ever be anything other than just a shooting specialist. Keep in mind, this was a Warriors team that was dealing with a ton of stuff at the time. They lost the 2019 finals to the Raptors, lost both Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant to serious injuries that would keep them out of the entire next season, and KD would leave them in free agency this offseason as well. If Golden State was going to keep this era going, they needed to draft well, and there were a lot of people that thought picking Poole here was a huge mistake. And honestly, at first, those people seemed to be 100% correct. As a rookie, Poole was pretty terrible. His per game stats weren't awful, but his efficiency certainly was, shooting 33% from the field on almost 9 shots per game. Granted, that Warriors team was a complete disaster with Steph and Draymond both missing a ton of time due to injuries, in addition to KD leaving and Klay getting hurt, resulting in a 15-win season and some truly disgusting basketball being played. As a bright spot for Poole, though, he did look really good in the time that he spent in the G League that season, giving some hope for the Warriors that he would eventually find his footing in the NBA. And in year 2, things were much better. Klay got hurt again, which meant a ton of minutes for the young guys on the roster, and Poole had some really promising performances, including a 38-point game. More importantly, he was much more efficient in year 2, and there was starting to be some hope the Warriors found more than just a shooting specialist with the 28th overall pick, as Poole got to start working on more of a shot creation in year 2. And then going into year 3, everything changed. Despite a crazy start to his career, Poole started to earn a reputation around the team as an extremely hard worker, someone that was improving year after year and wasn't going to be satisfied with just being a rotation player. He wanted to be the next great Warriors guard, the third Splash Brother, and was working hard to make that happen. And it showed up as he lit it up in the preseason going into his 3rd year. Poole began the 21-22 season starting at the 2 for the Warriors as Klay Thompson continued to recover from injury and took full advantage of that opportunity, averaging over 18 points per game and 30 minutes per game for the entire season. But there's much more to the story than that. He was doing a lot of the great Warriors guard stuff that Klay and Steph had perfected over the years. Always moving off screen, swinging the ball to look for a better shot. He honestly looked like the perfect fit. Without Klay, he helped keep the offense at a high level alongside Steph, and then once Klay returned, he worked beautifully alongside both of them in 3-guard lineups. And then once Steph went down with an injury late in the season, Poole went on an incredible run of scoring consistency, putting up 20 points in 17 straight games, and even finishing as the league leader in free throw percentage over Steph. And by the end of the year, he finished 4th in most improved player voting. And going into the playoffs, Poole continued to be a big part of the team, averaging 17 points per game in the postseason on great efficiency. But interestingly, once the rotation started to shrink in the playoffs, Poole started to see his minutes go down by a lot. The first sign of potential problems with his Warriors tenure, playing just 14 minutes in Game 5 and 17 minutes in Game 6 of the finals. There was a clear divide between the old Warriors, the guys that had been there the whole time, that had been through championship runs before, and the new guys like Poole that showed up to a great team but couldn't yet be trusted on the biggest stage. The Warriors won the title that year in 2022, but things were starting to shift. One of the biggest reasons for this was the contract situation with Poole. He was clearly worthy of a lot of money based on his regular season performance, but if he wasn't going to be able to be on the floor for even 20 minutes a game in the biggest games of the year, how much could Golden State really afford to pay him? After all, they already were the most expensive team in the league with big deals in place with Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Wiggins, with a new deal for Draymond on the horizon as well. And this situation, the contract, is the biggest reason why Jordan Poole is no longer a Golden State Warrior. And what that contract situation led to is a really ugly situation, especially for a team that had just won a title. Leading up to the following season, during practice, Draymond punched Jordan Poole and was suspended by the team. The video of the incident also got leaked to the public, which just made the situation even worse. Given Draymond's desire for a new contract at the time and Poole's assumption that he would get a big deal as the new guy on the team, there was definitely some animosity between Poole and Green even before the punch. And then just 10 days later, the Warriors paid Poole a new 4-year extension worth over $123 million, all based off of one really good season that Poole had the year before. And the timing of the extension is certainly interesting given the situation with Draymond, and the Warriors didn't need to do the deal at that time. They could have waited. Poole was under contract for the upcoming season and would be a restricted free agent in the following offseason, so the Warriors could just match any deal that a team sent his way if they wanted to. There was no risk of losing Poole if they were willing to pay as much as clearly they were based off of the extension that they offered him, and they could have just waited and seen how the upcoming season went before giving him so much money, but the punch seemed to change all of that. The Warriors scrambled to fix the situation coming off of winning a title, suspending Draymond and giving Poole a ton of money, but things were just never the same. There was visible frustration with Poole from guys like Clay during the season due to some questionable shot selection, and overall the vibes were just terrible from the time Draymond punched Jordan Poole, and his time with the Warriors seemed to be close to coming to an end. That year for Golden State though, Poole was still really good. He averaged over 20 points per game and again played 30 minutes a night, but his efficiency was worse, which again, with Clay fully back now, caused a lot of people in and outside of the team to question his shot selection, and once they got to the playoffs, a familiar issue popped up for Poole. He saw his minutes go down significantly once again in the biggest games of the year, and he averaged just over 10 points per game on terrible efficiency that postseason. Going into the offseason, it was clear that the Warriors wanted to make a change. They had already started making some cost-cutting moves during the year to save on the luxury tax, and if they were going to give Draymond a new contract, getting rid of Poole and his big money would make sense. Even with the punch and the other issues that Draymond had caused the team over the years, he was still viewed as a much more valuable championship player than Poole, and ultimately would get prioritized over him if it came down to it. And so suddenly, in the 2023 offseason, Poole's time with the Warriors was just over. After 2 really good seasons, a new giant contract, and an NBA title, the Warriors essentially just salary dumped a 24-year-old guard that they had just paid over $120 million to just a year prior. Poole was sent to the Wizards along with draft compensation in exchange for Chris Paul, who had just been traded to Washington from Phoenix. And this trade created a very weird situation for Poole. He was clearly a good player, and he had a ton of confidence offensively, and he'd gotten paid, and he'd won a title. Even he said that his legacy was secure, financially he was secure for the rest of his life, and now it was time to lead the Wizards, a team that clearly had one of the worst rosters in the league and had no true offensive creator on the perimeter, a role that Poole was all too happy to step into. Suddenly, he basically thought that he was Steph Curry in Washington, taking crazy shots, full of confidence, and unfortunately for Poole, kind of making a fool of himself. And this was unfortunate for the Wizards too, because they were hoping to get good value out of him eventually, either in a trade or on the court, once he put up big numbers in Washington, but it kind of just seems like Poole isn't really interested in that. He honestly got everything that you could ever want out of the first 4 years of an NBA career. Offensive responsibility, a ton of money, and then a title, and now he just kind of gets to chill with the Wizards. He can put up bad numbers, not really help his team win, and it honestly doesn't negatively impact his life all that much. This is a rare situation because almost nobody comes into the league as a late first-round pick and just has everything go their way the way that it did for Poole, and now the situation's just kind of sad. 18 months before his trade to Washington, he looked like the bridge to the next era of Warriors basketball. A front office that had mostly missed on lottery picks like James Wiseman and TBD, maybe Jonathan Kuminga, found and developed a gem in the late first round, a guy that perfectly fit in with the Steve Kerr system in Golden State, that was putting up great numbers and went on a crazy scoring run, and now he's just kind of wasting away in Washington, content with chucking up shots on a bad team. Maybe the Draymond punch ruined him, maybe the contract did, maybe he was just in the perfect situation in Golden State and we just never realized it. Maybe it was just a 1 or 2 year run of really good offensive play that led to a big contract that he was never truly worth. Maybe he got lazy. Maybe it's a combination of all of this, but one thing is for certain, Jordan Poole's ascension to a potential all-star career has come to a screeching halt. But still, it's an incredible story. He might never get back to where he was with the Warriors. He might honestly just be like a sixth man for the rest of his career. This contract might be one of the worst in the league for the next few years, but make no mistake about it, peak Jordan Poole was a good player, and I honestly hope that he gets back to that. He has the talent, and honestly, I don't really blame him that much for falling off a bit with the Wizards. He went from the best possible situation to start his career, minus the 15 wins as a rookie and getting punched in the face by Draymond, to maybe the most dysfunctional team in the NBA. It was always going to be an adjustment. We know he has the work ethic to produce on a good team, and I hope that he gets that chance again at some point, and hope the Wizards can get some value out of him in a trade. But regardless, his story is one of the craziest starts to a career that we have ever seen.